Aaron Swartz. Even though he wasn't a household name, his contributions changed the way we think and use the internet. For that reason alone, he deserves more of our attention tonight. At the tender age of 14, Swartz was already a computer genius and played a key role in developing RSS software that revolutionized the way we aggregate news. He then went on to help develop one of the most popular news ranking websites you may know, called Reddit. Later got bought, leaving Aaron with a substantial amount of money and the status of a legend among his internet peers. Now keep in mind, this was all before he was even 18 years old. You know, most teens who strike big would take the money and run. But Aaron clearly was never concerned with getting rich. Instead, his passion led him to commit himself wholeheartedly to the causes of internet freedom, civil liberties, and making information available to everyone who seeks it. He was an integral part of organizing the campaign to prevent the passage of the Stop Online Piracy Act, also known as SOPA. In fact, he was a regular guest on RT America to talk about the issues of privacy and copyright. I actually had the great honor of interviewing Aaron back in June about the mega upload shutdown and the FBI's attempt to seize its data. I asked him about the government overreach in the case and whether or not people would ever get their data back. Here's what he had to say.
I certainly hope so. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. You know, I mean, it's an example of how ridiculous this entire case is. You know, the government claims that what Mega Upload did broke the law, right? Okay, that's a reasonable dispute to have. You know, the law is very ambiguous. Copyright law is famously unclear. And so if they want to go to court and try and clarify the law, I don't have an objection to that. What's crazy is to say, oh, the law is unclear, you might be breaking it. What we're going to do is throw you all in jail, seize all the data, shut down the entire website, take all of your money, and then have a decision about whether what you did is illegal or not. It's just crazy. I mean, you can't imagine any other business in the world being treated this way.
Unfortunately, Aaron's words ring true in the case he was personally fighting at the time against the government. Because you see, in July of 2011, Swartz was arrested for allegedly targeting JSTOR, a journal storage that had digitized and sold scholarly articles at a high price to subscribers. Interestingly enough, none of the money actually went to the authors of the articles, and perhaps this is why Swartz targeted it and sought to release the articles for free, which he did by hacking into an MIT computer wiring closet. But he never distributed the articles, nor did he intend to profit from them whatsoever. In fact, once he was arrested, he returned everything he downloaded and vowed never to use them. The alleged victim in the case, JSTOR, even told the federal government that they didn't want to see him prosecuted. But despite those wishes, the Department of Justice came down hard, filing charges against Aaron for multiple felonies under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which could carry decades in prison and about $1 million in fines, all to set an example for internet activists worldwide. Aaron had no malintent, yet he knew that he'd just become another casualty in the two-tiered justice system, one in which the odds were heavily stacked against him. And when faced with those odds, Aaron chose death over life in prison. But his memory and accomplishments will forever live on.
They come to me and say, well, we're getting out of college and we haven't the faintest idea what we want to do. So I always ask the question, what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life? Well, it's so amazing. As a result of our kind of educational system, crowds of students say, well, we'd like to be painters, we'd like to be poets, we'd like to be writers, but as everybody knows, you can't earn any money that way. Or another person says, well, I'd like to live an out-of-doors life and ride horses. I say, do you want to teach in a riding school? Let's go through with it. What do you want to do? When we finally got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that. And forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. And after all, if you do really like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, you can eventually turn it, you could eventually become a master of it. It's the only way to become a master of something, to be really with it. And then you'll be able to get a good fee for whatever it is. So don't worry too much. Somebody's interested in everything. And anything you can be interested in, you'll find others who are. But it's absolutely stupid to spend your time doing things you don't like in order to go on spending things you don't like and doing things you don't like, and to teach your children to follow in the same track. See, what we're doing is we're bringing up children and educating them to live the same sort of lives we're living, in order that they may justify themselves and find satisfaction in life by bringing up their children, to bring up their children to do the same thing, so it's all wretch and no vomit. It never gets there. And so, therefore, it's so important to consider this question: what do I desire?
The failing started about 10, maybe 15 years ago. You know, the truth is, Todd, I used to knock meetings like this out of the park.
And what changed?
You, students sitting across from me.
Because we're more shrewd, because we see how things work, because we don't want to die for these pieces of shit.
Because you want to put as much distance between yourself and the real world as possible. And these pieces of shit, by the way, how many times are you going to say that? They bank on your apathy. They bank on your willful ignorance. They plan strategies around it. They try to figure out how much they can get away with because of it.
So blame me for it all. Blame me, because I might just want to live the good life, because I can, because I'm smart enough to. You're going to blame me because I don't want to work elbow to elbow with you on a goddamn collective farm? Doc, you're sounding a hell of a lot like my parents. They're always harping on how they're giving me a better life than they ever had. And then they resent the shit out of me because I got the nerve to enjoy it.
Todd, what good is a $90,000 Benz? There's not only not enough gas in the tank, but the streets and the highways are decaying to the point of becoming third world. If all your rants about Congress and politics are true, Todd, if things are really bad as you say they are, when thousands of American troops are dead and more are dying every day, probably as we speak, you tell me, how can you enjoy the good life? Rome is burning, son. And the problem is not with the people that started this. They're past irredeemable. The problem is with us, all of us, who do nothing, who just fiddle, who try to maneuver around the edges of the flame. And I'll tell you something, there are people out there, day to day, all over the world that are fighting to make things better.
You think it's better to have tried and failed than failing to try, right?
Yeah.
But what is the difference if you end up in the same place?
At least you did something.
He was a genius. You know, you put him on the Steve Jobs level, you put him on the Mark Zuckerberg level, you put him on a John Lennon level, you know, and he was a great kid with a good heart trying to do something good for the world.
Rest in peace, indeed. Let's never forget why Aaron Swartz's death has moved so many of us to the core. Let's never stop fighting for what he dedicated his entire life to. So let's stand up and protect the last bastion of true democracy, the internet, our right to privacy and free expression online. And let's do it in Aaron Swartz's honor.